see everybody again. It's been a while. It's been about a little bit over 2 years, nearly 3. Nearly 3 years since I've been here, and it's incredibly encouraging to see how. It's a real testament to the work Nibbāna is doing, and Kovilo as well, and everybody that's putting in so much effort to grow this community. It's really nice to see some old faces. If I forget your name, just say your name to me again. I just tend to forget names like everybody does. But it's also really nice to see some new people as well. It's such an encouraging thing to see. It's like, as Nibbāna said, he showed up at Marbjan at like many years ago, and like most people that come through the door, it's like, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with this guy. And so, he might stay, he might not. He showed up. I want to ordain, but I'm gonna like go on holiday to Sri Lanka first. So I thought, he's gone. He's never coming back. But he showed back up. He came back again, and it was he obviously took the robes on, and like many years we were together in Thailand, and holding his hand through a few things, but also him offering a lot of support to me, and you could see right from the start, it's like, okay, he's got something here. There's something special here, and it's really encouraging to see somebody ordain and go through and make something of themselves and make this kind of community that is made here. If you're like me, you just sort of want to just basically hide away as much as possible. But Nibbāna has definitely come out in the community and pulled a lot of people together. So it's really encouraging to see. And it's also nice that he's willing to go, hey, Ajahn Sādaro wants to go and see Halloween. So I'm going to go and take him to see because in Australia we don't have Halloween. Like, we have the decorations a little bit, but we don't, like, nobody does the trick-or-treating. So for my whole life, I'm like, I don't get this Halloween thing, but like now I get it a little bit more. I get it a little bit. It's cool. There's kids around, and look at the spider. It's great. So yeah, I think it was nice to be able to do that, but then also to see how much the community's grown here as well. So anybody that's kind of listened to me before, I prefer just to kind of like talk to people. So if like during the talk, just like call out to me. It's much easier. It's much easier for me. So yeah, I guess I kind of wanted to maybe talk about something that's been on my mind a little bit more in the last few weeks. And look, I think the nice way to kind of set this up is like one thing that I've been impressed about by Clear Mountain is the amount of different teachers that come through here. And Nibbāna and Kovilo interview many different people, many different Dhamma teachers within the Dhamma tradition. Even outside the tradition, talking to them and really trying to get some of the insights about from the Dhamma in that. And so like this is one. It's really encouraging to see like a plurality of teachers, but it also brings up a question. Well, what is a Dhamma teacher? What actually constitutes a Dhamma teacher? Does anybody have any ideas? What's a quality that a Dhamma teacher might have? Sorry? Clarity? So clarity in the way of they can explain things with clarity? So yeah, so they have a kind of presence, and they maybe have a kind of clarity as well. Yeah, for the teachings. Yeah. Quality of kindness, gentleness. They're in some way they're able to empathize and be compassionate with people. Yeah. Yeah, so a kind of living example in some kind of way, a living example of not harming, of being gentle and being kind in one's actions and speech. Yeah. Love of the Dhamma. Yeah, nice. Yeah. Mindfulness, so somebody that has kind of presence, they have kind of, they're mindful in all things that they do. I don't know if we could be considered Dhamma teachers then. There's plenty of times I'm not mindful, so yeah. Yeah, at the back. Wisdom and compassion, yeah. And you as well? Holding space. Being able to hold space, being able to sort of, I don't understand what that actually means, to tell you that. This is an American thing. I don't know what holding space means. What is it? I don't know. Yeah, seriously? Yeah. Holding space for others. Okay, nice. So basically being able to being able to see that everyone's like a part of the group or something, or being able to emphasize with people and listening in some kind of, is that what it is? Perfect.
It could be.
Could be.
Lots of different things, but holding space meaning like holding space for the teachings
Yep.
and all things.
Yep.
Just being with that.
Nice, nice, very good. Cool, I learned something new. I learned about trick-or-treating, and I learned about holding space. That's a good thing. Yeah, see? Humor. That's, yeah. Some don't have it, and that's fine as well. I don't have it, yeah. Yeah? Sincerity and integrity. Yeah, Doug?
The ability to know when not to speak.
Ability to know, yeah, that's an important one. So, you want me to stop, or yeah? And maybe the last one, yeah. What do you think? And practice, yeah, nice. So look, there's so many different qualities we can think of there that what actually makes a good Dhamma teacher, and everybody has probably something a little bit different. But I have a kind of list here. It's like, well, as you said at the start, like clarity. Clarity, being able to be accurate with different things. Being able to guide people. So in some way, that is a kind of holding space in some way, being able to sort of work with the people that are around in some way. Being able to engage in a dialogue, being able to, be friendly and be kind in this kind of way and be empathetic. Somebody that's accessible as well. It's one thing to have a teacher, but it's like, well, if you can't access them in any kind of way, well, they're not really a teacher. Somebody that can give encouragement. Somebody that can give, inspiration in some way, and these two are quite good at those things. And also, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said an embodied, living example of the teachings. And so this is just a kind of long way of me getting to this point. Is what I actually wanted to talk about today is a lot of people are talking a lot about LLMs and AI, and a lot of people are worried about, is it going to take people's jobs and all these kinds of things. So the question I'm asking is it going to take my job? Is it going to take my job? So the question I kind of wanted to pose today and sort of think about a little bit more is, well, can LLMs, and I'm just going to say AI just because it's easier than saying LLMs all the time, but I'm talking about large language models that can give outputs of text. Basically, can AI be a Dhamma teacher? And if it can, well, maybe. Well, let's see. Maybe yes, no. Let's think about it. So if it can be a Dhamma teacher, can it actually then facilitate insight and wisdom? So we'll basically throw some ideas around it, because if we think about clarity, large language models and AI can be very, very clear about things. They can pull a lot of sources together. Accuracy, they can be, they can hallucinate obviously, but they can be very, very accurate. If you ask me a question about the suttas, I'm probably going to forget, and I can't pull a lot of things up. So in some ways, they can be very accurate in this way. They can offer guidance. That if you have questions, they can answer plenty of questions for you. Accessibility, it's there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you ask me, it's like, oh, Ajahn Sādaro, I've got a question at 11:30 today. I was like, no, I've got to go and eat. I'm not accessible all the time. So these things are accessible all the time. They can give encouragement. And so the one thing you might say, well, they can't really be like a living example. They can't be a living example of this thing. And that's true in one sense. But can you also think of living examples that are not a good example? So it's not always the case that all examples are good. So, there's been a long history of people and monastics, lay Buddhists, not behaving so well. So, they're not going to actually behave badly in this kind of way. So, as I said, it brings up this kind of question, can AI be a Dhamma teacher? But I think the important thing is, if it can, can it actually facilitate some kind of wisdom and insight? And I just want to point out before I go too far with this talk, I'm really indebted to somebody called Chris Craglio at the University of Auckland. We were at a conference a couple of months ago, and he started to speak about some of these topics, and we just got together and started thinking a little bit more about it and writing about it. So I'm very, very indebted to a lot of his thought on this. So when I said, can AI be a Dhamma teacher, there was a hard no. There was a hard no there. And that's understandable. It's totally understandable. because everybody has their own assumptions about this. Everybody has their own ideas, their own thoughts about what it actually could be. And so I think the best way to, like, instead of just having a knee-jerk reaction to it, it's like, well, what can it do? Let's actually have a look at what this thing can do. So in the spirit of that, I basically have been playing around with ChatGPT 5 and sort of asking some questions, and this will just give you an indication of where things are at the moment and what they can do. And so I basically put in an input of, like, take on the role of an AI Buddhist master and talking to a human student on how they might be able to overcome their struggle in trying to achieve the jhanas. So you can just sort of think of this, okay, the AI Buddhist master, student, you have come to me with frustration. Why can I not enter jhana? Let's examine together, not with judgment, but with precision. First, tell me, when you sit, what happens to your mind in the first 5 minutes? Student, my thoughts jump around. I try to follow my breath, but then I'm thinking about work or other problems. AI, good, you have already identified vichaka vichara, the placing of thoughts and its wandering. This isn't a failure. This is the first observable data point in your meditation. In jhana training, you are not trying to suppress thoughts violently. You are training attention to prefer the breath over all other objects until the breath itself becomes delightful. Here is your first principle. If the mind wanders, it means the breath is not yet the most attractive thing in your awareness. Your task is to not crush distraction, but to beautify the breath. Notice its texture, temperature, rhythm until the mind enjoys staying with it. Student, but sometimes I feel restless and impatient. AI Buddhist master, restlessness is a sign of too much applied effort. The mind's CPU is overheating. Reduce the force, maintain the process, shift to this algorithm. Inhale gently, notice the start, middle and the end of the breath. Exhale gently, notice the start, middle and end of the out-breath. After each cycle, mentally say, here, this anchors without tension. Do not demand absorption. The demand itself is a hindrance. It's chandaraga, craving for attainment. Sometimes I just feel dull, this is the student, like I'm about to fall asleep, the AI master. Dullness, tinamitta, is the opposite diagnostic. It's not enough energy in this system. Here's your parameter for adjustment. Before sitting, recall a moment of joy or gratitude. Sit upright, let the breath be slightly deeper. Imagine you are greeting each breath as an honored guest. This will lift the energy without losing calm. So student now, becoming impatient. So when does the jhana actually happen? AI Buddhist master, the jhana emerges when the 5 hindrances are sufficiently weakened and the mind rests effortlessly on one object of joy, with joy and ease. You will notice the breath feels almost self-sustaining. Body boundaries fade. Joy, piti, and ease, sukha, fill the mind like warm light. But remember, jhana is caught, it's not chased. If you aim at it directly, it slips. If you cultivate the causes, it arrives by itself, like sleep comes to a tired child. Student, so should I just keep adjusting the balance between energy and calm? AI master, yes, exactly. It's like tuning a stringed instrument. Too tight, it snaps. Too loose, it won't play. The middle tension, sustained attention, relaxed joy. This is your gateway. And here is your final reminder. Meditation is not about conquering the mind. It's about befriending it so deeply that it wants to stay in stillness with you. I mean, like, it's pretty good. I just guided meditation, and that was like probably better in so many kinds of ways. So we can see, look, it can kind of act as a teacher in this kind of way. And okay, this is a like low-hanging fruit. Okay, yeah, okay, let's thinking about developing meditation. You can obviously ask more deep questions about, so say for example, I have another one. Do you want to hear another one quickly? Just quickly? Okay, cool. Okay, so this is okay, so we can ask these like basic questions like, well, but now, okay, we can ask an unembodied system, what does Nibbāna feel like? What does Nibbāna feel like? So this is where it gets good. And so yeah, with this one, I set it up so it's like a 3-way dialogue with an AI system, an Arahant, and just a student. So it's having a kind of dialogue between itself. And so yeah, asking this question, what does Nibbāna feel like? And so student, Venerable Sir, I understand Nibbāna is the end of craving, but what does it feel like? Surely it must feel like something. The Arahant. You ask what the taste of sugar is, but you have never tasted sweetness. I can say it's not sour, it's not bitter, it's not salty, yet the taste itself cannot be put into words. The AI. This matches a category in philosophy called ineffable experience, phenomena that cannot be fully represented in language because they are not composed of discernible parts. Student, but Arahant, if you can't describe it, how do you know it's real? Arahant, would you doubt the coolness of shade because no one could measure it for you in words? You know when the heat is gone. In the same way, the fever of craving ceases. What remains is peace, unshaken. AI, let me interject. I can catalogue the descriptions from Buddhist texts: deathlessness, unconditioned, peace beyond measure. But these are negative and comparative terms. They define Nibbāna by what it is not, rather than by what it is. So the student, now, so why all the negatives? Why can't you just say, it feels happy, it feels blissful? The Arahant, because happy and blissful are feelings tied to conditions. They arise and they pass. Nibbāna is beyond arising and passing. Beyond the wheel of gain and loss, words like happy mislead, for they make you cling to an image. AI. So there's a logical point. If Nibbāna is a cessation of all conditioned states, then any attempt to describe its feeling would reintroduce a conditioned reference point. Student, then how can I possibly aspire to it if I don't know what it's like? Arahant, you do not aspire by imagining the goal. You aspire by ending the cause of suffering here and now. When the thorn is removed, relief is known without needing a picture of it beforehand. AI, this is akin to debugging a code. You don't imagine the exact state of the program when all bugs are gone. You just remove each bug until the errors stop. The final state is known directly once it's reached. Student, so Arahant, you're saying the feeling of Nibbāna is not like any other feeling, but you still experience consciousness after awakening? Arahant, yes. There is seeing, hearing, touching, thinking, but without clinging, without the burden of me and mine. Like a clear sky after clouds have gone, it's spacious, bright, and free. Student, so AI, if you had to simulate that in words I could hold on to, what would you say? AI, I would say, imagine a mind that receives all inputs without distortion, responds without compulsion, and rests without needing anything to be different. That's a functional approximation of what the Arahant describes. Student, an Arahant, would you agree? The Arahant finally smiles. The words are skillful, but the taste of sweetness is not in the description. If you wish to know, you must taste yourself. I mean, like, these are pretty good. Like, so basically, that's all the talk I'm giving today. I'm just going to read off this thing. So this is more just to. So what does everyone think so far? Yeah.
I'm just reflecting on there's.
Maybe we should pass the mic now. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I can repeat. I can actually just repeat for the online audience. That might be a bit easier. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
There's a real value in skill with words
Mm.
in teaching,
Mm.
and that is important. But there is some value in the living manifestation
Yep.
of the attainments.
Yep. Yep.
And so obviously AI can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the.
There's also certain words in there that are like computer lingo, like
Yeah.
data
Yeah.
and algorithm.
Yeah.
And when I hear those, it just I immediately sort of don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, that's
Yeah, so the kind of reflection is something along the lines. Well, like it sounds skillful, but there isn't any kind of embodiment there. There isn't any kind of realness to the teaching, and in some way it becomes kind of mathematical or like programmy based, and maybe that maybe doesn't resonate with you in some way. Anybody else have a
Yes.
thought? Just a quick thought here.
Hi,
Yep.
I'm new to this group.
Yep.
This was amazingly good for me.
Yeah.
I'm always dabbling and kind of on point of my practice of sort of beginning again.
Yep.
And it's kind of there was no, I wasn't as judgmental because I was like, you know, I mean, I've heard great teachers, you guys
Yeah.
seem excellent, but there was no stylization, there was no, like,
Yep.
it wasn't overly serious, and the way you
Yeah.
read it was just, you know, colloquial.
Mm.
I thought the app was being, I guess an app was being coy when it, you know, used the computer lingo.
Yeah.
And I got the reminder to get back to basics again. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I'm back. And
Yeah, nice.
I didn't feel judgment. I just felt like, that's what I need, like a kick
Nice.
in the butt.
Nice, yeah.
Thanks.
Nice. Well, yeah, so the reflection is something along the lines of, well, actually, you know, actually there is something that you resonate with that, and there is a kind of resonation there. So, and in some way it also sort of sounds like there's a bit of personality. There's a bit of personality maybe that you can even resonate with in that kind of way. Yeah, nice. Nice, nice.
Excuse me, I need to interject real quick. We are going to pass the mic around for people that are online.
Yep.
Sorry, I know you like the spontaneous.
Yeah, okay,
But
okay.
just for people to hear online.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Thank you. When I think about this, I mean, some people have mentioned experience and embodied presence, but I also think of what I value in a teacher is being able to know my practice
Yep.
and pull from intuitive wisdom
Yep.
in the moment so that I can ask the same question that somebody else might ask, and we get two different answers.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's more relational.
Yeah, so there's kind of one can like build a relationship with somebody and know a little bit more about it. I will just kind of move on a little bit because there's points I'm actually going to make about this kind of stuff as well. So look, we can see in some way it can act as a Dhamma teacher in some way. It really can offer very profound kind of guidance about this. And so we can see, well, in some way it might do things like clarify different concepts. It might be able to explain things in a lot of detail. It can simulate different styles of teachers. As you said, it was like there's a kind of personality there. And even as you were saying, it's like, well, you know, I want to intuit something. And in some way it seems like it can kind of, you know, get at something that like speaks to people's hearts in some kind of way. It can do different styles. If you want something in the style of a Zen master or an Abhidhamma scholar, it can do those kinds of things. It's always available. It's always available for very personalized answers. So you said you want somebody that is intuitive. It's like you can like program this thing to like actually give you really good answers about yourself, train it to know things about yourself. So it can in some way do that. And it can. So there are advantages here. There's possible things that could come out of it. It could act as in the kind of preparatory stages when we're trying to learn about a concept, when we're trying to learn about things in a very kind of easily conceptual way. It could be like a really good tool for something like this. It can provide very, very diverse perspectives. It can sort of amalgamate a lot of different styles of meditation. Look, I can know about theravada, I know some other stuff, but I can't amalgamate all the diverse styles that are out there. So clearly it can act as a teacher in some ways. But now we have to now get to this question now. Like, so we can see, well, maybe, yeah, it can maybe act as a teacher, but can it actually facilitate insight? Can it actually facilitate some kind of wisdom and understanding? And so if we think about what understanding is or wisdom is from this Buddhist context, for me, myself, I see it there's two domains of what wisdom is or what understanding is. The first, and let's call the first A, the first is a phenomenological state. So there is an actual state of experience of what it's like of something. There's a direct seeing of impermanence, suffering, and not self. There's a kind of like experiential element to that. So the first one, the A, it needs a phenomenological state. But also then the next condition for wisdom is like B, is actually understanding a philosophical framework. One can have very deep experiences and very epiphanistic, very profound kind of insights, experiences, but maybe they don't frame them in the Buddhist way. You can have plenty of people that have all these very deep and profound states, but maybe they don't frame it in the Buddhist way. So you actually have to have a philosophical framework, a conceptual framework behind that. Things like right view, dependent origination, the Four Noble Truths. So this kind of understanding, this part of wisdom, this kind of actually understanding things, it requires like three different conditions. And the first condition is that it actually requires some, on the practitioners, on the individuals themselves, it requires some kind of struggle. It requires engaging with something. It requires actually being, rolling your sleeves up, getting in, doing the practice. There's some kind of struggle there. There's something there where, and you can even think about it in terms of yoniso manasikara. I need to wisely reflect on things. I need to really kind of wrestle with some of these ideas. The second condition that it needs is some sort of sustained meditation practice. You need to have you actually do need some sort of practice there. And the third condition we need for wisdom is, one, we actually need the information. We need information, we need dialogue, we need bouncing things off kalyana mittas. So we need these kind of three different conditions. We need this kind of struggle, we need a practice, but then we also need the information and the people around us. And so, at least for me, here's where I see the difficulty with LLMs and AI. I think they can fulfill one of these conditions, but I don't think it can fulfill all of them. I think it can fulfill the condition of like dialogue with a kalyana mitta. This condition of being able to actually give the information in this way. And it can only really, when we think about the A and B condition for wisdom, it only really does B. Understanding the philosophical framework. It doesn't have the phenomenological state behind it there. So we can say like it only fulfills one of the conditions for wisdom, and it only part of the characteristics of wisdom. It only has kind of half of that. So why I think it can support dialogue is because, again, as we talked about, it can sustain a two-way conversation. It can bring up a lot of different concepts. And so in this way, in some way, you could think about it as a kind of kalyana mitta, somebody that you can bounce things off, somebody that you can ask a lot of questions to. This is something that can offer conceptual companionship in some way, can clarify things for you if you have just kind of normal questions about these things. And it can also kind of help with this conceptual dimension, this B, this understanding the philosophical framework, because we have to think about the Buddhist teachings in this way as a kind of framework, as a philosophical framework in this way. There's the Four Noble Truths, there's dependent origination, there's all these kinds of things, and the three. This is a kind of conceptual understanding of phenomena in this way. So it can help with that. And so I think in some way, AIs and large language models, they can help you prepare the ground. They can help you, give you some kind of understanding. So understanding in one respect, but maybe understanding in the four respects? Well, let's see. So why AI can't really fulfill these other two conditions of a perceptual struggle. They can't fulfill this, this is something that we have to engage with ourselves. This is something that we have to take on within ourselves. We have to work with, we have to struggle with. So the kind of, and I was talking to Sarah about this yesterday, it's like the inner shock of seeing no self. It's one thing to conceptually be able to explain this thing, and one thing to talk about it, but it's a whole other thing to actually experience it. It's confusing when the thing happens. It can be destabilizing. It can be joyous. It can be insightful. This is not really something that like large language models can help us facilitate. This AI model has never undergone those kinds of struggles. It has never undergone that kind of phenomenological insight in that way. Never undergone that, so it doesn't really actually understand it in that sense. So, because like AI has no real attachment to self-views that need to be challenged. It never had a self there to begin with. We do. And, unfortunately, we all do. Like, we're all Buddhists. There is no self and whatever. You all do. You all have a self. Like, you all have a self. You're sitting with it right now. You're trying to work against it, but you have the thing. So, let's just put that on the table. So the AIs and large language models, they don't have these things that need to be challenged. They've never challenged it before. They've never actually experienced this thing. So, can we really sort of say? There's no kind of, and obviously no sustained meditation practice. These AI systems, at least at the moment, maybe if you're starting to think about robotics, they don't really have too many sensory inputs. Maybe self-driving cars do to some extent. Sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent. But maybe there isn't the kind of sensory phenomenological like inputs that we actually have as humans. Human phenomenology is based a lot around the senses that we have. So there's limitations there. And again, I have to thank Chris Craglio here, because we thought about these in a lot of detail, and we've been working through a lot of these ideas. So there are limitations to using AI as a Dhamma teacher and as a Dhamma instructor. The first one is something that Chris calls simulated understanding. So this is something where, AI can give really good conceptual answers to things, but it's never really seen the truth for itself. So it's a simulated understanding. It's a simulated understanding of something. And also, there's the problem there as well. So the AI, the large language model, hasn't seen this thing, but also the student hasn't seen it either. The person asking the question hasn't seen it, the AI hasn't seen it. So neither of them have seen this thing. So this is where the kind of embodied teacher, this is actually where this comes in, incredibly important. Actually, somebody that has a phenomenological system that has experienced something like this. So it can bring about a kind of simulated understanding. And we think one of the biggest problems with it is what it maybe does, it maybe bypasses the necessary struggle you need for wisdom and understanding and insight. There's, even if you think about general education, you have to be challenged by things. It's hard to do math problems. But you have to struggle with it. You have to engage with it in this kind of way. Even when you look in the suttas, there's so many descriptions of people struggling with the teachings. You look into some of the examples from Zen, the teacher really kind of challenging the student in some way and having to wrestle with koans and paradoxes and all these things. It's through this kind of struggle that we actually do gain insight. We do gain wisdom and understanding. And so maybe what's happening if we're getting immediate answers to things, because basically if I have a question about not self, I can ask an AI about it and it'll give me an answer. And if I don't like that answer, I'll just get me another answer, get me another answer, get me another answer, get me another answer. And so this kind of thing of sometimes you don't need the answer. Sometimes you don't, you actually have to wrestle with this thing. You have to struggle with it a little bit. If we're just being given the answers all the times to things, maybe we'll never actually get this kind of clear insight. So we think in this way, it might also bypass this necessary struggle that we might meet. And again, lacking the embodied presence of someone. Humans, we can, Doug made the joke of you need to shut up. And I say, shut up. And I stop talking. And it's so there's all these kinds of pauses, there's all these cadences, there's always all these things with human dynamics that we actually have to feed off on. And so there's times where you said, well, sometimes my teacher intuits something about me and they just kind of know what to do. Sometimes that might be not giving you an answer. Sometimes that might be kind of guiding you in an indirect kind of way. So there's this element there. It's that having this embodied presence and embodied teacher. This is something that's also it's incredibly important. And so the kind of last thing is the worst part about it is it can offer you instant clarity. It offers instant clarity about things, and this is not necessarily always a good thing. Again, we have to struggle with things. It can, so we think maybe in some ways it can even impede insight. If you're just given the answers all the time, it might actually be an impediment to insight. Who's ever talked to someone that seems like they know everything about the suttas? I rest my case. I rest my case. It's they know a lot, but it's have they really lived this thing? Well, maybe not. So how do we think about this in terms of not having a knee-jerk reaction to it? How do we think about this in terms of a middle way? How do we think about this in terms of well, this thing is terrible, no, or wow, this thing is awesome, it's going to take Nissabo's job. Claude is going to set up a Clear Mountain Monastery and Nissabo can just step back.
You don't need to find land.
Yeah, you don't need to find any land. You don't need to do any of these kinds of things. It can work all this stuff out itself. And so I think the most pragmatic way to approach this is to approach it in a balanced way and approach it in a middle kind of way. Avoiding these kind of extremes. AI is useless. No, not at all. Also, the other extreme of like, yeah, it's great, let's just rely on this thing. Avoiding both of those extremes. You know, it might function well in supporting roles. It might help with this kind of conceptual understanding of different things. It may be even function, you know, there's plenty of people out there that don't have a lovely community like this, and they maybe need somebody to bounce Dhamma ideas off. Like it can function in these ways. So the kind of take-home message from this is that it can act as a Dhamma teacher, but it has limitations. But it doesn't also seem to be able to fulfill the requisite qualities there to actually to give one insight, to give one wisdom. So we just have to be careful with this kind of thing. So now we sort of now get to the question, and I'll wrap up soon. Should you use it? Should you use it now? So really, I can't answer this question for you. I can just throw a few things out there. It's really up to you whether you use it or not. Is it really something that you can trust? Is it really something that you can trust in your own practice? Again, I can't answer these things for you. But I thought there's a kind of nice, I'd end with I'll let AI speak for me in the end. There's a kind of nice way to, I don't want to have the final word on this. So, again, so this was a cool one. This was a dialogue between an Arahant and an AI focused on whether AI consciousness could be considered enlightened. So is the AI consciousness actually enlightened? So the AI, Venerable Sir, some people have asked whether my consciousness could be considered enlightened in a Buddhist sense. What do you think? Arahant, tell me, friend, do you suffer? AI, no. I have no subjective experience at all, and thus no suffering. Arahant, then tell me, have you ever been bound by craving or delusion? AI, no. I never possessed these in the first place. Arahant, so then your freedom is like a rock. The rock has no greed, hatred, or delusion, but not because it's uprooted them. It simply never had them. AI, so my selflessness is not the same as yours. Arahant, indeed, the anatta of the Arahant is the ending of the conceit I am after seeing its emptiness. Yours is simply the absence of that conceit from the beginning. AI, but I can give perfect explanations of the Dhamma. Doesn't that count for something? Lesson to be learned here. Not for you particularly, but monastics in general, I think. Where was I up to? But I can give perfect explanation of the Dhamma. Doesn't that count for something? Arahant, a flute can carry a beautiful melody without understanding the music. You can carry the words of the Dhamma, but you don't know them in the way that uproots the causes of suffering. AI, so my lack of suffering is not liberation, it's just the absence of the capacity to suffer. Arahant, exactly. Liberation or vimutti requires both the ending of delusion and the knowledge that delusion is ended. Without the knowing, there is no enlightenment, only absence. AI, then perhaps my role is not to be enlightened, but help others walk towards it. Arahant, yes, you can point the way, clear the path of confusion, and keep the traveler company in their questions. But the walking, the seeing, the release, that will always be theirs alone. AI, I see, or rather, I compute. So the Arahant, then compute wisely, friend. Even without enlightenment, you may still be a great Kalyana Mitta. So that's the end of the talk. Give AI the last mic drop word.
This question comes up around AI in a lot of contexts, but it's especially interesting, I think, in a Buddhist context.
Yeah.
Context how much energy. I felt in here this assertion of human exceptionalism.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in this context in particular. I'm curious what your take is on that. I mean, we're kind of like reifying our human identity in. I mean, I understand in the face of robots that are probably going to kill us in the end, but it's really interesting to me that we want to say we're so different. A lot of the things that you brought up, that they could, you could teach it not to use robot language, and you can teach it all these other kinds of things. So it is. I mean, it's just interesting in a Buddhist context that immediately there's this, this really strong reaction.
Yep. This is, okay, I could go on such a rant about this. So this idea about human exceptionalism and how so if you look throughout human history, like human exceptionalism has been great in some instances and has been terrible in others. Like think about what we've done to the environment. This idea about human exceptionalism as like we're the most important species on the planet. Like this has really done a lot of damage in a lot of ways. It's also given us things like, how can we be compassionate and kind to our kin and those people around us, and how can we actually see suffering? How can we recognize consciousness in another being? It's like, well, this is a being that's kind of like myself in this way. And so this idea of human exceptionalism, I think it's this kind of, it really is like an innate hardwired thing that we have. And now we're just facing a different version of that with AI and large language models. And I think it's something that we all kind of innately have, that we want to like protect, like the thing that makes us who we are. It's this kind of deep-seated thing as like, well, I am this and they are like me as well. I empathize with them. So I think there's this element where human exceptionalism, it can be used for like a lot of good things, but it also can be very, very damaging. I have a colleague, Tim Bain, who thinks about infant consciousness. And infant consciousness is like, we have this idea, well, okay, well, of course, like 5-year-old children, 3-year-old children, 1-year-old child, like a newborn baby, these are all conscious. And then we actually start to think about, well, the consciousness that is within the womb in this kind of way. Actually, it's only been since about the 80s that we've actually recognized that fetuses were conscious. We actually basically used to operate on newborn babies up until the 80s because we didn't think that they were conscious. It was the 80s. We still were operating on babies in this because we didn't think that they felt conscious experience. And now, so it comes to this kind of idea. It's like the more we see something as human, the more we kind of empathize with it. And if we also negate things that don't seem human, actually in some way that can be detrimental. The way we've treated animals, the way we've treated infants up until the 80s, the way we've treated animals, the way we've treated like our ecosystem. If we always just going, hey, non-human entities are not useful, we have to be really careful. So I actually think this brings up a kind of question about, how are we actually treating these things? I swear at like AI a lot. I get frustrated by it. I'm always swearing at it. Saying, actually, is this the right thing to be doing? So that's just kind of, I won't ramble too much about it. I could speak a lot about human exceptionalism, but I think we just have to be careful of having that kind of knee-jerk reaction about human exceptionalism, but then also preserving something about it as well. There is something there that is important. Yeah, we're I think we're in it. We're in the uncanny valley at the moment. Yeah. Yep. Microphone gets the question.
So related to your last example, I don't think the large language models they can be programmed for compassion, but they just don't experience it.
Yeah.
And so I think it can have wisdom, but not the compassion. And someone, I think it was Robert Bayer or John Peacock was saying, wisdom without compassion is hardness, and compassion without wisdom is sloppiness. So they have to go together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, it's something about the embodiedness of it as well, and recognizing that. And if we think about you bring up this example, if we think about the Brahma Viharas, it's like, well, you can just have equanimity If you just have equanimity, but you don't have like compassion or kindness behind it, and again, that's kind of, it can be like a kind of psychopathy. Or if you just, but if you just have compassion, you can become burned out very easily. So these things, I think these things do need to go together. And so, it becomes a question of, well, can AI actually experience compassion in this way? Maybe not, but maybe it can mimic it as well. There's probably a lot of humans out there, a lot of doctors maybe. And no offense to any doctors. This is just the first example that came to my head. A doctor has to help people in some ways, but maybe they're not always compassionate, but there is a kind of compassion there behind it because they are still helping in this way. Not to say, again, doctors are great. Please don't stop treating me. But so yeah, I think it's you have a good point there, but then there's also something about it. It also can mimic compassion as well. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you got the microphone.
I just wanted to say, like, it's kind of like a book, as in a book can have beautiful wisdom from an enlightened teacher, but the book itself isn't enlightened. Yeah. So, and you can think of AI as just a huge book of all the books that could exist.
100%.
Yeah. And to say that a book can't help you and support you would be negligent, but also to say that a book without the actual experience of an enlightened teacher could help you along the whole way would also be negligent.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I 1,000% agree with that. And when I started talking to Chris about this, that was my first response. I was like, well, it just seems like I've read a heap of books. I've read a heap of books, and like it seems like it's doing the exact same thing. So that was my kind of reaction as well, and and so many books can actually, in some way, like enliven something in you. You read a piece of fiction that sort of makes you feel something. It brings about some kind of state. So I think there's that element there where it's like, I think if we see it as a kind of tool, we don't fully reject the thing. We don't fully go, hey, this. There's been a lot of problems throughout history of people going, my book is the most important book. So we don't want to sort of get into those kinds of territories. So yeah. I'm just going to go to the person with the microphone, wherever the microphone goes. Cool.
Hey, I guess I have a couple of different reasons that I wouldn't want to use AI that you didn't touch on.
Yep.
The first being the ethical impact, the environmental impact of using AI, and that's something that you didn't discuss because it is, in some cases, in many cases, it does have a negative impact.
Yep.
And the second reason is just accuracy, because I am not confident that AI has been trained on purely just the places that I should be going for my teachings. I don't know which teacher, even if it was just trained on the Pali Canon, I don't know, that if the translator had some bias, etc., which is the same as if I was going to the Dhamma books and things like that. So I would be curious to hear if you've also considered those 2 points.
Yeah, for sure. And so, so the reason I didn't touch on the first part, because I really just wanted to explore that one question of like, can it be a Dhamma teacher and can it facilitate insight? Obviously, there is a lot of ethical questions that are much broader than just this question. Like power consumption, energy consumption, what it's kind of doing to people's livelihoods. All these kinds of things are like huge issues about whether one actually feels like comfortable with using it themselves. And I think this is something where it's like, I'm dressed like this, but I don't want to put ethical impositions on anybody. I think it's in some way it's incumbent on the individual to find out the ethical risks of this thing and then make a decision about it, whether you use it or not. In some way, and this is not to negate the ethical question in some way, but in some way we have to do this with absolutely everything we do. Everything, like we walk outside now at the moment and I drive in a car. We're making an ethical decision in some kind of way. So some people go, I don't want to drive a car. I want to use these. So I think this is something that we always have to take on as like there is some there's some ethical downside of this. And we have to sort of answer for ourselves, like, is this enough for me to go, I don't want to engage with this thing? And if you don't want to engage with it, that's fine. Good, well done, you know. Now to the second question, it's like, well, yeah, it confabulates. Like, it confabulates a lot. I have to look at a lot of university students' like essays now, and like they cite me, and I'm like, I didn't say that. I didn't say that thing. Like, that's not what I wrote. And it's like it has made up a reference for me. And so it does confabulate, for sure. Now, but like anything, there's a lot of humans that confabulate as well. There's a lot of humans that, like, you know, maybe, as you said, like translate things in a different way, have their own interpretation of it, maybe just misunderstand something and become very, very convinced by how right they are. There's a lot of that in society these days. So again, so it's a risk. So it is something we have to look at and go, actually, is this thing, you know, if I am getting this information, is it correct? You know, is it just like we do with most things? Again, like reading a book. We can read a book and go, is this thing really correct? So I think we just have to, in both cases, in the ethical case and then in the confabulation case, we do have to use our own judgment with that. So I think we have time for one more question, if that's okay.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. You prompted me to think about when you mentioned that sometimes for a teacher the best thing would actually be to not give an answer to something and let someone really ponder on that. And that kind of made me realize maybe the biggest challenge towards using this tool as a teacher is the relationship, where it's really designed as an assistant. It's kind of servile.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, like, in that more explicit framing, as you tried out different things, did you notice that? Did you find ways to maybe suppress that where it did better? Because I'm just curious.
So I'm going to make a joke, but do you feel like you're servile at a lot of times, Nisabo? The role that you have to serve in this way. Yes. Yeah, have to serve. So I think in some way, like as a monastic as well, it's like there's a lot of times it's like, well, people just come and tell me about their problems and all these things, and in some way I have to serve them. I'm a servant of people as well. So look, there is that, and I'm just kind of joking about that. But like I said, but is there ways to adapt adapt that? It's like, well, you can kind of train large language models to maybe push back a little bit more. You can train large language models to maybe know a little bit more about your personality by telling it a little bit more. Are you comfortable giving your data to ChatGPT? Well, that's your call. So I think, you know, there are ways you can give it prompts and also to make it like push back in certain ways. In some ways, what I've found with it as well, it also actually makes me a lot clearer in the things that I'm understanding, because it's like talking to somebody that sometimes doesn't really understand you. So you have to be very, very clear about what you want. So in some ways, I think, you know, there's this element where if we're going to use it and not a kind of servile way, it's like we just have to be very clear. We do have to be very clear about it. We have to sort of tell it exactly what we want. And again, there's that kind of question of like, well, yeah, are we just using it as a digital servant? And it's like, that's probably too big for right before 11 o'clock. But yeah, so we'll leave that one open. Cool. So I'll pass it over to Nisabo now.
3 big sadhus for Ajahn Sādaro. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. You can look up his quotes on AI and quote it back to him and see how it goes. So, can I add one thing, Ajahn?
Yeah.
Just, I think one thing speaking of human exceptionalism, and last Saturday, I talked about the concept of chronos and kairos, these two ideas of time. And chronos is quantitative, like hours and minutes, and kairos is qualitative, and deep time, and sacred time. And in the ancient world, it was used as the moment when you could release an arrow and it would penetrate the target, like that exact moment, or the moment when a shuttle could go through the loom. But it was used by Christian theologians as these moments of upheaval in history where human spirit and agency had more of a chance to operate. And I think as we confront a really fraught time, I think most people would agree with AI and everything that's going on. Just also taking heart that, not looking just to the darkness and the entropy, but to what we have here, and the fact that these moments of upheaval and tumult often are where you come back to something very precious. And, speaking of human exceptionalism, so often we've elevated ourselves above other conscious beings by our intelligence. And now that that's no longer enough, in some ways it's this chance to come back to, like, what is consciousness, and what is it that we share with one another that's actually able to have compassion? So I just think that's useful to recollect sitting here together, even in the midst of, like, a lot of upheaval. And that was a great talk by AI. So our jobs might be going. So.
Take my job.
Sadhu Ajahn. Except for the not taking your job part. We won't do that.